guys, it's Sarah, and today we're going to talk about all the books I read in the month of January. January was pretty interesting. So I'm doing more mood reading. I'm picking up more of just what I want when I want. There's a few things here and there that were kind of a little bit planned, but it was a good month. I read some really good books. I read a couple books I didn't love so much, and I had 2 DNFs. So there is that. I am definitely a believer in DNFing. If you're not enjoying a book, don't waste your time with it. But I have 2 of those this month. So it was interesting. It's something I'm getting a little bit more used to because I've always been such a structured reader. So mood reading is a little bit of a foreign concept to me. And I definitely had, at the end of this month, I had a situation where it was time for me to pick another book. And I got that paralysis of, I don't know what to pick. I have no idea what I want. I could go in 5 million different directions and I didn't know what I wanted to read. So I ended up just making a decision, and I'm very happy with the decision I made. That's the book I'm currently reading. So it's going to be a little bit interesting picking my books every month, especially if it's not something that I know I need to read for like book club, or if I'm planning a buddy read or anything like that, like it's not already kind of picked for me. But I've been enjoying it too. So it's been interesting. The first book I read, I actually read on my Kindle, and this is one that has been on there for a very long time. And that is Poughkeepsie, and this is by Deborah Anastasia. And this one my sister loves, and she's been telling me for a very long time to read this book. And so I finally did. This is an adult romance, and maybe like a new adult romance, I would say, but it follows a woman who is in a bad relationship. She's not very happy. She's actually engaged, and she is not happy with him. She takes the subway into work every day, and every day that she is there, she sees this homeless man who just kind of hangs out at her subway stop. And finally, one day, she talks to him, and they start a little bit of a conversation, and it just kind of goes from there. And they build this relationship, and it's their love story from there. And she really gets involved in his life. He has a lot of issues, I would say. And she kind of helps him navigate those a little bit. She starts meeting people who are involved in his life, and learns about his childhood and growing up, and the people that he is kind of found family for him, and what their lives are like. They're not all great, or they're not all on the up and up, if you will. But you see her and him start this relationship and how they kind of navigate it and stuff. And I didn't really like it. I didn't. I liked the storyline. I thought the storyline was good. I thought the way she told it was fine. My problem with it is I had to really suspend my belief for a lot of the situations that they were in. And I have a hard time doing that with contemporary books that are supposed to be completely realistic. Because I remember I was reading it, and I put it down at one point, and I said out loud, I said, that would never happen. You are never going to be able to drive a motorcycle through a glass door of an emergency room and park your motorcycle in the lobby of the emergency room and walk on, and nobody's going to stop you. That's not going to happen. It was just... And it was things like that happened over and over again. And I'm just going, this is not a thing. You could never get away with that. You could never do that. And so it was a little bit too much of that for me to enjoy it to the point where I could actually see this stuff happening, and I felt for the characters and all that stuff. I didn't really feel anything for any of these characters. And just some of the dialogue was a little bit cringy. There was one character in there who was just like this gangster type, and he was way over the top for me. Like, the things he would say, I'm like, ew, like, stop talking. But it was supposed to be endearing, and like women flocked to him. Okay. So I don't know. I just didn't like it. So I gave it 2 stars. Next book that I picked up is one off of my review cart. So I read an arc off my review cart. This one came out in 2018. It's fine. That is The Book of M by Paying Shepherd. I actually ended up picking up the audiobook of this from my library, and the audiobook has 2 narrators, and they are James Fooey and Emily Wu Zeller. The audiobook narration I thought was great, especially Emily Wu Zeller. She was fantastic. I really liked when she was talking and she was going through, like, there was some sort of really intense scene or she was supposed to be scared. You could hear it in her voice. So I really, really liked her narration of this. Okay, so this follows a pandemic, and it's something that happens where whoever is infected with it loses their shadow. And that's kind of the first sign. So if your shadow is gone, that means that you have this thing, and you should be scared, because not long after that, you start losing your memory and you don't know who you are. You don't know where you are. You don't know who the people around you are. Like, you lose your memory. And because of that, like, it even gets to a point where you forget to feed yourself. Like, that's a basic human instinct, and you start forgetting that. And so it slowly starts killing you because you just stop doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing, including breathing in some cases. So we start out following this man and his wife, and they are kind of on the run from this and decide that they want to go and just be away from everybody and everything to kind of guarantee that they are not going to get this. And then one day the wife wakes up and her shadow is no longer there. And so she takes off because she doesn't want to infect him. And it just kind of goes from there. You kind of see them kind of searching each other out throughout the book as well, and you see the different paths that they take and the different people they come across and how they survive it. One cool thing about this was that this started out being set in my local area, which was nice, right outside DC. So that was kind of cool. It was talking about some places around here and towns and stuff, and I was like, oh, that's right down the street. Like, so that was kind of cool. So I liked that aspect of it, definitely. Overall, when I finished this, I kind of went, okay, I read it. And it was fine. It didn't blow me away. It wasn't anything that I was completely super invested in the entire time. I thought there were good parts of it, but definitely towards the end, it got very magical realism for me, and I had a hard time with that because I felt like it was just pandemic. Okay, I get this. There's a little bit of a romance, which I really liked as well, but then it was just like, oh, now we have this thing happening, and okay. So it threw me off a little bit towards the end. And I still don't really know that I wrapped my head fully around that. And there were a lot of characters in here to keep straight. And sometimes I would kind of have to remind myself who this person was and where they were in the story and where they were. Okay, are you with this person? Are you with this person? Which group are you with? And it was a little bit hard to keep straight at times. So yeah. I left this book feeling just okay about it. So I gave it 3 stars, middle of the road. I liked it. I didn't love it. I'm not going to hang on to it. But it was fine. Will I read more from this author? I don't know. Not quite sure yet. The next one that I read was the book that I read for our January book club. And it is something that we did a book exchange for in December. We all did like a big book exchange at book club. And then we decided for January, we were all going to read the books that we received. And then we would come back and then we would talk about them and then we would do another exchange. So sounds like fun. We haven't done the exchange yet, so I do still have the book with me, but that is Just Haven't Met You Yet. This is by Sophie Cousins. This is an adult romance. And this follows a woman who has always loved the idea of her parents' love story. They met on this island and it was like love at first sight, and they spent this whirlwind time together, and then they got married and they were so happy. And shortly after she was born, her father passes away. Her mother has always told her all these wonderful stories about her father and how much he loved her and what their romance was like and their relationship and all these things. So she works for kind of a lifestyle website, and she is a journalist. So she decides she's going to take this work trip to this island where her parents met and to do a feature on it and tell her parents' love story and do all this stuff. So she is taking this trip in order to kind of, number one, find out more about their love story, and maybe talk to some of her father's family members that she hasn't ever connected with, and also to write the story for her job. And as she's traveling to this place, she accidentally mixes up her suitcase with someone else's at the airport. She doesn't realize it until she's back in her hotel, and she's just very excited to be back in the hotel, and she's exhausted from traveling, opens the suitcase, and it's full of men's items. So it's not her suitcase. And so she kind of accidentally, on purpose, starts going through the suitcase, just curiosity to see what's in there. Yeah, so she's convinced that the person of this suitcase is her soulmate. And she is now on a mission, not only to write her story and to do all these things for her parents' love story, but she needs to find this man and switch suitcases back. So she's on a mission to do that as well, because he's somewhere on the island. So while she is trying to do all these things, she actually befriends a local taxi driver, and he agrees to drive her around on all the places that she needs to go in order to go to the places where her parents met and spent time and, do all this research and stuff. He knows the island very well. He's from the island, so he offers to drive her around and kind of be her tour guide, if you will, and just kind of take her to some of the places and maybe some places that she's never heard of, just to kind of help back up her story a little bit. Meanwhile, she's still trying to find the owner of this suitcase. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. I really enjoyed this. I read it pretty quickly. It's a very fast read. Was it predictable? Yeah, it was. But there were still some things that kind of popped up that I wasn't sure how they were going to go. So I really did like that aspect of it. It was funny. It made me laugh. And I thought it was heartwarming. I really did. I just had a really good time reading this. There were parts in it that definitely made me mad at certain characters, and there were parts that I was like, ooh, how's she going to handle this? Because things are happening and she's going to have to make decisions now. What's she going to choose? And by the end, it was definitely predictable, but I really liked the way that it went, and I thought it was interesting and funny and a good time. And I would definitely read more by Sophie Cousins. I haven't read anything else by her, but I would definitely pick something up. Don't know that I would buy it. I'd probably get it from the library, but it was a fun time for sure. I'm not going to keep this on my shelves because I am going to take it back to book club and exchange it for something else, but I did really enjoy it. And I gave it 4 stars. And the next one is a book off of my Book of the Month shelf. It is also a 5-star prediction, so I won't give you my star rating just yet, but I did pick up The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. This is another one that I actually went ahead and listened to on audiobook as well, because Julia Whalen is the narrator, and she's one of my all-time favorite audiobook narrators. So I listened to this one. I listened to this huge, over 400-page book in 4 days. I could not stop listening to it. Yeah, it was a really, really great audiobook. This follows a woman named Elsa, and this is set during the Dust Bowl / Great Depression time period in America, and she is from Texas. She grows up in a very tumultuous household. Basically, she is told from a very young age that she's ugly, and she's not good enough, and she's never going to find a husband. And that is basically the sole purpose for a woman in life, is to find a husband. And she's not good enough to do that. Therefore, she is worthless. That's what her family tells her. Therefore, that's what she believes. She decides to act out as a teenager, as things do, and she gets pregnant. Because of her pregnancy, things start happening in her life that she wasn't planning, nor that she really want, and you kind of see how things happened as that goes. Eventually, Elsa and her family make their way to California, because in Texas, it's the Dust Bowl. They literally are being killed by the dust. It's getting into their mouths, into their stomachs, into the cattle. They can't even milk their cows because it comes out as mud, because there's so much sand in the system of the cows. That's how bad it was. And I mean, when those scenes were being described, I felt my mouth getting dry, and I felt like I needed to drink water, because I felt it. I was like, oh man. Okay, so they eventually make their way to California to try to get out there, to have a better life, to find jobs, and to just kind of get away from all that. And they are met with some harsh realities when they're in California as well, including a lot of prejudice, you guys. I was really surprised by how they were treated as being Texans and people in California, including the government, did not want them there. They were viewed as, you're coming in and you're taking our jobs and you're taking up space in our state and we don't want you here. You're freeloading off of us, basically, is what it was. And I was like, whoa, like I was really surprised by that. I wasn't expecting that to be one of the themes in here, but it was, and it was a big theme, and it was a lot of things that held her down. So you follow her and her family and how they are surviving this whole big situation. So I'm hanging on to this one. I love Kristen Hanna as an author. I have not read a book by her that I haven't absolutely loved, and this was no exception. So yeah, no star rating yet, though. You have to wait for that. All right, now we're going to talk about my first DNF, and I hate this, you guys. I hate that I DNF'd this book, but I did. I had to make a decision. So I DNF'd The Thinking Woman's Guide to Real Magic by Emily Croy Barker, and I hate that this was a DNF because I got this as a blind date with a book on our trip to Asheville for our Bookish Besties weekend, and I got halfway through this book, you guys, like 230 pages into this book, and I couldn't do it anymore. I tried so hard. It started off really strong. I would say the first probably 75 pages of this book I really, really liked. But then from 75 on to 230, there was maybe 3 interesting scenes. And that's just not enough to keep me interested. I was reading it physically, and this one follows a woman. She works in academia at a college, and so she's very much into literature, and like that's kind of her focus is literature and stuff like that. Now she goes to a wedding, which is being held in the mountains of North Carolina. It's actually right outside Asheville, which is mentioned in here, which I really loved. Like that part, I was like, oh my gosh, it's in Asheville. And like, she's staying in a cabin in the woods right outside Asheville, and the way she was describing this cabin and the mountains behind it and the trails she was taking when she went for a walk, it sounded exactly like what we were experiencing on our Asheville trip. So that was really, really cool and got me very excited because I was like, oh my gosh, they even found a random graveyard in the woods. We found a random graveyard in the woods. Like it was very parallel to some of our experiences in Asheville, which was really, really cool. So I loved that part. But then I kept reading, and she goes for a walk. Like I said, she takes a hike just to kind of get away and clear her head a little bit because she's having some romantic issues. And she stumbles upon this clearing on her walk and ends up kind of getting herself turned around and doesn't know which way to go back. She ends up stumbling further upon a house in the middle of the woods. It's this gorgeous, like estate. It's beautiful. She has no idea where she is or what she's doing there. And then she meets this woman who lives in this house. And so they start up a conversation. This woman gives her a drink and they're talking. And this woman says, I'm having a party tonight. You should come. And she's like, absolutely. And I was kind of like, why are we just completely going along with this and not realizing that you don't know this woman, you don't know these people, you have a wedding tonight that you're going to, why are you going to this party instead? But it becomes apparent that she is being charmed by this woman who is a magical being into kind of being a part of their community for a very specific reason. So it started to make sense after a little bit, and I was like, oh, okay, got it. So that didn't bother me quite as much. I actually kind of liked that storyline a little bit, especially the way that it went and what happened from there. That was pretty interesting. However, she gets herself into very dangerous situations with these people, and she ends up being rescued by a magician who is in a neighboring kingdom. And this kingdom and the kingdom that she was in have a big feud, like eons long feud happening between them. They're enemies. But she finds refuge with this magician who is very old and has been around for a very long time and is very respected in the kingdom as well. Now, here's my problem. My problem is that she can't get back to her own world. And it definitely goes into like different realms and dimensions in the world and different time periods, and you can travel to them and all these things, but it's very hard and difficult, and they don't know if they can get her back to her own world and her own time frame. So it had a very medieval feel, if you will. Like there's no technology, there's no cars, there's no nothing like that. So it felt very like medieval time period. And she just kind of acclimated to this, no problem. I'm like, I feel like she should be freaking out more, like a lot more. You know what I mean? And number one, she's finding out that people are like magicians are real, and she's not questioning it. And now she's wanting to practice magic. I'm like, okay. Like there was like, she needed to be freaking out. She needed to be freaking out a lot more than she was. And she just wasn't. And I was like, this is way too accepting for me. I need struggle. I need a character to like, I need to feel like if I was in that situation, I would be freaking out, and she just wasn't. So I had a problem with that. There are a couple of really cool magical scenes in it, I will say. But then she starts developing a crush on a character. And when she started like talking about that, I said, okay, no, can't do it, because it was gross. So I can't. I could not go any further. I'm not going to say the words like it's not realistic, because obviously it's not realistic. This is fantasy. But if you're going to have a fantasy that is entwined with contemporary time frame, like there needs to be something there for me. And it just wasn't there really at all. And yeah. So I hate that this was like that though, because I really wanted to read and love this. But yeah, I DNF'd it, and I'm not going to hang on to it. Gross. The next book is a book that I listened to, and I got the audiobook from the library, and that is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. And this one was for the No Cover Charge book club, which is hosted by Tia and her husband. I will leave Tia's channel link down below, but they started a book club this year, and the first book that they were going to read was this one. And it's one that I have been wanting to read as well. I didn't own a copy, so that's why I got it from the library. And I wanted to go ahead and read it along with them so that I could talk with them in their live show, which I did, and it was a lot of fun. This book is narrated by Stephanie Racine and Richard Armitage. So there's two different narrators, one for the husband's point of view, one for the wife's point of view. So this follows a married couple, and they've been married for 10 years. And they are going on an anniversary trip right now because they are having some struggles in their marriage, and they're thinking, let's get away. Let's just get away from everything and just see if we can connect, being away from everything else that's happening around us, right? So they go to this very secluded chapel in Scotland, and it is literally in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing around it, and it's in the middle of a snowstorm, which was very scary. But they get there, and they go in, and they get settled, and you can tell that there's a lot of tension between them, but obviously in the beginning, you don't really know why. And that kind of starts to unfold throughout the story. And it's alternating between him and her. There's also another little viewpoint of letters that the wife has written him over the years, which I really liked. So on every anniversary, she wrote him a letter and kind of what has been happening in their lives and how she's feeling and things like that. And she never plans to give these letters to him. She just writes them. But you're getting those letters throughout the story, which was really a cool aspect. And I really, really liked that, because you kind of start seeing some things that are leading up to it. And while they're at this chapel, some things start happening, like weird things that are unexplainable, noises that they can't detect, and just like some things are starting to happen, and it's really starting to freak both of them out. Meanwhile, you're in a little bit of both of their heads and thinking like, could one of them be doing something? Because obviously neither one of them are happy. Is there an ulterior motive here? Like you're just kind of trying to dissect all these little things throughout. And I really liked this book a lot, and I was really surprised, and I was really happy, because I've read an Alice Feeney book before, and for me it was just okay. I don't even really remember a lot about it, so I wasn't sure if she was going to be an author for me, but this one, I ended up giving it 5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. I liked little details that were included in it. I liked the aspect of the rock, paper, scissors, which is a big theme throughout it in multiple different ways. And I really liked that as well. I thought that was really clever. And I just really loved the letter aspect because it shows you how their relationship is changing over time and things that are happening. The husband has a condition called face blindness where he cannot see details in people's faces, which is not something I've ever heard of before, but it was very fascinating. And so you see how that makes things difficult for him. The husband is also a writer. And so you see him being very much a reclusive person. He doesn't really want to be around people. He just wants to write. He just wants to be in his stories. He just wants to read. And so you see him navigate his career as well. And then you see her have her own job and like what that entails and all that stuff too. So you're getting all these details throughout. And I just really loved it. I really did. I listened to it really quickly. It was a great time. When I was listening to it, I didn't want to stop. And I ended up giving it 5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. I really, really did. I didn't see too much wrong with it at all. I didn't have any big problems with it. I thought it was great. And I'm excited to read more Alice Feeney now. Okay, this next one I picked up on a whim, and I picked it up because it is a book I've been thinking about quite a bit lately about reading, and I kept thinking to myself, I should just pick that up. I just need to pick that up. And then I started hearing about it from multiple different people on podcasts, and that was kind of the clincher. I'm like, okay, I'm picking up this book because I heard about it on the Currently Reading podcast. Somebody pushed for it, and I was like, okay, I just need to read this. So I went and I grabbed it off my shelves, and I put it on my nightstand, and that ended up being the next book that I read. And it was the biggest surprise to me because I went into this book thinking it was just going to be okay, or like, okay, cool, I read that, I liked it. No, I loved this book and it completely destroyed me. That's The Serpent King by Jeff Sentner. Destroyed me. I mean, you guys, okay. This is a young adult contemporary fiction. Hard-hitting. This follows a set of 3 best friends that are in high school. They're seniors in high school, and they are living in Tennessee in a small town. We are following Dill, whose father is in jail for having inappropriate photographs of young people. And he was also the local pastor who was a snake handler. So that was a big thing for his family and in his childhood growing up. He grew up around that and having that type of religious faith, where they are handling snakes and they're drinking poisons and they're putting all their faith that they're going to be okay. So that was his life growing up. And now that his father is in jail, it's just him and his mother, and they are barely making it. They are poor. They really, really are. And it's really hard for him. We are also following Lydia, and she is the daughter of a dentist, and I believe her mother is a real estate agent, so she's not poor. She's very well off. She doesn't really want for anything, and her parents are fantastic. They're fantastic people. And then we follow Travis, who lives with both of his parents. His brother passed away in the war. He was a Marine, and his father is abusive. And so you see him dealing with that. He is also bullied at school. So all 3 of them are bullied at school, actually. Okay, so there's lots of content warnings definitely for child abuse, domestic abuse, alcoholism, bullying, so many things, right? So lots of things in here that are going to be happening. Okay. So you're following these 3 people, and they're best friends, and they are navigating their senior year basically, and they're trying to decide if they're going to go to college and what they're going to do after school, and do they even have the option to go to college, and seeing them deal with all of their family stuff. You see them be there for each other. You see them going through very different things to the point where they're even kind of arguing amongst each other because they don't think the other person understands. And it's a whole thing where you just really, really get to know these characters and understand what they're going through because you're getting perspectives from each of them. So each chapter is a different person that you're in their story with them. You see what's happening at their house versus what's happening at the other two. You're just with Lydia for this chapter and, what she's talking to her parents about, and you're just with Dill with this one. And so it kind of goes all over the place, and you really, really get to know these characters. And I was reading this book. I was sitting in my office in a recliner, and I was reading this. My husband was on the computer, so we're in the same room. And I start sniffling, and he looks over at me, and I just have tears streaming down my face, you guys. And he looked at me, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not okay, because these people are not okay." And I was crying. I mean, I had to put it down and ask for tissues because I couldn't see the words through my tears streaming down my face. You guys, whoa. I was not expecting this book to hit me the way that it did, but it really did. And it was funny. There were so many passages in here that I just laughed out loud. I used book darts in this, and I did post this on Instagram, but you guys, I have so many book darts in here that are I marked pages and passages that I absolutely loved because they were funny. Like, I have so many in here. I'm going to have to get more soon because I used majority of my darts in this book by itself. So, okay. I absolutely love this. And it was such a surprise. I'm keeping this forever, and I will be recommending it to a ton of people. It was so fantastic. And it really took me by surprise. It really did. And I don't feel like even me explaining it did it justice, but it's so good. If you guys have this or you've been thinking about reading it, I encourage you to pick it up soon because it was a huge, huge, pleasant surprise to me how much I loved this book. And I'm so happy that I read it. Okay, we're going to swing the pendulum a little bit here because the next one I picked up was a book that came out in early 2021, and it was something that was sent to me from the publisher as well. So I read another arc off my review cart, and that is Last Call. This is by Elon Green. And this is a nonfiction true crime book that follows a serial killer that preyed on gay men in New York in the early 90s. This is another one that I listen to on audio because it is really short, and I tend to prefer my nonfiction in audio form if I can find it, depending on the subject matter. But this one I felt like I definitely wanted to do on audio. And I did listen to it pretty quickly because it's just not a very long one. But the narrator is David Pichu, and I will say I did not like his narration. I thought it was very robotic. So that I don't think that affected my overall rating for it because the content was definitely my rating, but it didn't help. So, gosh, okay, overall, it talks about these crimes and what happened. Now, here's my problem with this book. What I did like about it was that it did focus on the victims, and we got to know the victims and got to know what they were doing up to the time of their death and kind of things that were happening around them and how they maybe have come in contact with this killer. And so that was good. We got to get to know the victims. I liked that. However, the author tended to go off on different tangents about basic overall injustices towards gay people that really took away from these crimes. And here's why it bothered me, because the serial killer himself was gay. So it wasn't like a straight man preying on gay people because they didn't like gay people. He was picking his victims. A lot of them were physically intimate with him. And that's how he was able to do things to them, because he had either had relationships with them already and he knew them, or he preyed on them by getting them to be intimate with him. So he's a gay man, and he was openly gay. He wasn't even closeted. So it wasn't anything like that. But when you're going off on tangents about injustices for gay people, but that wasn't why they were killed. So to me, that didn't make a ton of sense. Maybe it did in the fact that the police didn't put a whole lot of emphasis on these crimes. I could understand that part of it, but that's not the reason they were killed. It wasn't because they were gay. It was because this guy was a serial killer and it was easy for him to, choose his victims this way. And it also talked a lot about political parties of people. And that bothered me too, because this was not a politically motivated crime spree. There was nothing to indicate that this killer did anything because of a political party. And he kept talking about different people related to this case and what political party they were in. I was like, who cares? This isn't a politically motivated crime. Why are we talking about political parties? So that bothered me too. And when I finished this book, I felt like I understood what the killer did. I understood who the victims were, but I don't know still what his motivation was. Why was he doing this? I still don't know. And I don't know if it's because no one knows. This guy is in jail. He was convicted in the early 2000s. So I don't know. I ended up finishing this book not feeling one way or the other about it. I was like, okay, well, I know this guy's name and he's gross and that's all. But seriously, I think the author failed to get me to really feel anything about it. And all of the side tangents on different things that had really nothing to do with these crimes really distracted me from that type of thing. And that's what I wanted from this. I wanted the who, I wanted the what, I wanted the why. And we never got the why. We got the who and the what, but never the why. And if you don't have a why or something that you can even allude to as the why, then why write the book? You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I felt. Maybe that's just stuff that I want from my true crime novels, especially if it's going to be focused on one serial killer. So I don't know. I gave this one 2 stars. So yeah. And definitely going to be unhauling this one. Not going to keep it. Okay, and the next book was another book on my review cart, and this was another 5-star prediction, so I'm not going to give you my final star rating quite yet, but that is The Plot. This is by Jean Hamp Korelitz, and this was published last year. So this one is a 5-star prediction because it follows a writer who meets a student in a writing class, and the student has this really great idea for a plot for a book. And he confides this plot to this instructor. And the book is never written because the instructor knows that with this plot, this is going to be a huge hit. This is going to be a bestseller. It's going to be everywhere. Everyone's going to read it. Like it's the next Gone Girl type thing, right? So the book is never written. And then the writer realizes after a few years that the student passed away not too long after this writing course. So he never wrote the book, never had even time to write the book. And so he takes it upon himself to take that plot idea and to write his own book. It's not the same as the original, like what the student was writing, what he was able to read of what the student was writing, even though he only read a little bit. So he didn't use the same names. He didn't use the same locations. He changed a lot. And then he was able to kind of take the story with the same plot line, but in different ways than, he would have taken it. And it becomes a bestseller. And he becomes very famous and everyone's reading it and it's an Oprah pick and it's all these things. But it's not his original concept. And then one day he ends up getting some emails saying, "You're a thief. I know that this is not your story to tell. I know who wrote this story. I know whose plot line this is, and it's not yours. And I'm going to tell everybody, and I'm going to out you and all this stuff." So now he's trying to figure out who in the world is doing this, because this student who died doesn't even have any family left to make claims to anything. So it was all very interesting. So he goes kind of on a little bit of a hunt trying to find out who this person is, and he becomes a little bit obsessive about it. And in the same time, trying to keep this all quiet from his colleagues and his family and stuff, because he doesn't want anyone to know that he stole this. And yeah, okay, my thoughts. I loved the concept of this, definitely. One thing that I really wish had happened was I wanted kind of like a montage of him actually writing the book and seeing his writing process a little bit and see him grapple with some of the guilt he was most likely feeling while he was writing this book. And like even if it was just like 20 pages or something, or just one chapter of him writing this book, but we never saw that. It went from, hey, this guy's dead, maybe I can write the book instead, to years later, the book is written and it's a bestseller already. And we just kind of, it was a big time jump, like from one chapter to the other. And I really wanted a little bit more of that time period in between where he was writing it and then when it became a bestseller and when it came out. I want to see his anxiousness about that. You know what I mean? And that's not something that we got. So that was something that I really was craving. It definitely started out slow. It took a little bit for it to really keep my attention. But once it did, I was in. And you also get parts of the book in here. So you're seeing the finished, published book. It's only like 2 or 3 pages at a time randomly. And it was kind of settling. It was going up and down between like a couple ratings for me. And I was just like, But I will say the ending of this book was solid. Like the last 50 pages of this book were fantastic. I really, really liked the ending. So that kind of solidified like, okay, I like this book. I would definitely recommend it for sure. There are also a couple of scenes in here that were set in Athens, Georgia and at the University of Georgia, which if you know me, you know I'm a Bulldogs fan. So that was really cool because I like kind of knew some of the places they were talking about, which was really awesome. So that was neat. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. No star rating yet, but solid. I'm not going to hang on to my copy of it, to be honest, because I know that I'll never reread it, but it was good. Okay, last one to talk about is my second DNF. Now, this is going to be a DNF for now. I don't want to DNF this permanently. It's something that I want to go back to at some point. I just don't think that right now is the time for me to read this because I was trying and I was really struggling. And I feel like if I save this for another time, I could pick it up and really enjoy it. So I'm DNFing it for now. I'm keeping it on my shelves. I will get to it at some point. Just now's not that time. And that's A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. And I had started this book in December of 2020. And I think over the period of a month, I got through 100 pages of it. And I did enjoy those 100 pages. I really did. But I didn't pick it back up again until January of 2022. It literally sat with a bookmark at page 96 for a year. I just never picked it back up. And I don't know why. I got distracted by other things. And I just kept saying, I'll get back to it. And then I tried to get back to it and I made it another 15 pages. And I just said, I don't know that I can do this right now. I really just don't think that right now is the time for me to read this book because it felt like a slog. And if I know that this is a sad book and it's not going to be happy and it's going to be emotional, it's going to be a lot. And I don't think I'm at a place right now where I can handle that. And so I think it's just something I need to shelve for a while. So it's a DNF for now, but I'm going to go back to it. So I just put it back on my own TBR list on Goodreads. So I have it. It's here. It will be ready for me when I'm ready for it. And I think if I come back to this at a different time, I could really, really love it. So I'm just going to take it off my currently reading that has been there for over a year and just take that pressure off myself. So I took out the bookmark. Whenever I do end up reading this, I'm probably just going to start over from the beginning and just go in fresh again. But it's going to be a while before I end up doing that. But I did give it a try again, and just now's not the time. Ooh. Okay, guys. So I'm going to start keeping track. Like I'm telling you as I go, like what I'm keeping and what I'm not. But I want to give you the stats at the end too. So in total, for the month of January, I read 8 books. I DNF'd 2, one of them permanently, one for now. And I read 2 digital books. So 1 ebook that I do not have a physical copy of and 1 audiobook that I do not have a physical copy of. So overall, I'm keeping 3 of the books that I read. I'm unhauling 5. and 2 of them were digital. So yeah, and I'm not going to get either one to add to my shelves or anything. So I thought that was kind of interesting, like just keeping track of what I'm keeping and what I'm getting rid of. So I'm getting rid of more books than I'm keeping this month, which is kind of cool. Okay, guys, that is going to be it for my wrap up today. Thanks for hanging in. Sorry, it was a little bit long, but I've been taking extensive notes on my books, which I really have been enjoying. So I feel like now when I'm sitting down and talking about it, I feel like I know what I'm talking about and I'm remembering things I wanted to say because I'm writing them down in the moment, which I'm really enjoying. So I hope it's informative for you guys as well. Let me know down below if you have read any of these. How was your reading month in January? Let me know. Did you read any favorites? Yeah, let me know what your favorite book was. Did you have any DNFs like I did? Did you have any that were underwhelming? Tell me all the things about January I want to know. And I will see you guys again soon. Hope you have a great day. Bye.